We will be speaking on the right to exercise personal liberties versus need for rehabilitation. For the pro-personal liberty side, we have Christy.
Hi.
Savannah.
Hi.
And Heather.
Hi.
On the attacking side, for the pro-rehabilitations, we have Sarah.
Hi.
And Noelle.
Hi.
Christy will begin with her claim for pro-personal liberties.
Thanks, Alessia. Yeah, my claim is that people with disabilities have the same basic human rights as everyone else. And oftentimes they're just unable to make decisions for themselves, but they are still allowed those human rights. And first off, I just wanted to start out by saying that the obvious that we live in the United States, and one thing that we strive for in this country and always have is equality and human rights. We've fought hard to ensure that our differences don't withhold our legal right to make decisions and to make our own choices. All throughout our country's history, we can see men and women fighting for basic human rights for all people groups, despite differences. So the ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it became law in 1990 and was revised later in 2008. This law states that discrimination against individuals with disabilities is prohibited in all areas of public life. So that includes schools, jobs, modes of transportation, grocery stores, libraries, all of it. Just to ensure that individuals with disabilities are given the same rights as everyone else. And in an article that was published on autistic advocacy, one author says it really well when he said that the freedom to make choices is a human right. And it's not just our country. There are international human rights laws all over the world that are put in place to protect people's rights to make decisions in their own life. Everything from the right to choose their own health care and the right to choose who they want to marry. This author on autistic advocacy also claims that as adults without disabilities, it can be easy for us to take for granted the right that we have to make our own decisions and the ability to do so. And so then we don't often understand the fact that in a lot of cases, adults with disabilities just aren't even considered and their decisions are just made for them. And in cases of if an individual has been determined to have a greater cognitive impairment, then this will be necessary for other people around them to make a lot of decisions for them. But in some cases, it's not the case, and it's just not, the individual is just not considered. I wanted to present the case of Margaret Hatch. Some of you have probably heard of her. She goes by Jenny. She was a 29-year-old woman with Down syndrome, and she took her parents to court because they were exercising guardianship over her and seeking to kind of get that back. She had moved in with a couple in her community, and she didn't want to move back into their parents. She claimed that she had received abuse under their care for many years, and she wanted the ability to choose her own guardianship. And her parents were fighting back that she wasn't competent enough to choose her own guardianship and that she needed to stay with them. So the case lasted about 6 days, and the court interviewed Jenny multiple times, and they deemed that she was completely competent to pick her own guardians. And so they gave guardianship to these friends that she'd made, and she was able to then gain more independence throughout time. They put supports in place to help her, just increase her independence. And so she, at the time of the court case, had a job. She had friends in the community. And if she had not been able to just choose her own guardians, then she would have been, back with her parents, where she would not have been allowed to go to her job. She wouldn't have been allowed to see her friends. And yet she had the competency to be able to choose these things and kind of take care of herself. And yet, there was the chance that might not have even happened for her. And so I think that this case should just make us stop and consider other individuals who could be in the same situation, where they feel powerless and voiceless, as decisions just keep being made for them. They're dismissed and not even given consideration when it comes to their equal rights as a human being. The BACB Code of Ethics, Code 2.05, is set up for the rights and prerogatives of clients, stating that a behavior analyst has the responsibility to support their clients' legal rights. So I believe that this means that as behavior analysts, we ensure that our clients have the proper supports in place to help them make decisions for themselves, however big or small those decisions are. In a research article by Guess, Benson, and Siegel Causey, the authors say that having the opportunity to make choices reflects positively on the individual's feelings of independence, dignity, and self-worth. So knowing this as a BCBA, it's vital that we consider Code 2.05. It's our responsibility to ensure that the individuals we work with are given opportunities to make choices and decisions for themselves whenever that's possible, however big or small they are. If they're choosing whether they want macaroni and cheese or mashed potatoes, or if they're choosing, the day's activity, like still giving them that opportunity goes a long way. And so, in doing that, we're supporting their perceived dignity and self-worth. And so as advocates for our clients, it's imperative that we value and uphold their rights as human beings. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Christy. Sarah will now make her claim for prohabilitation.
Thank you. So habilitation should not be viewed as a human rights disgrace. Instead, habilitation should be viewed with more of a human rights-based approach by putting the goals of the client first and using an effective treatment backed by research. So in 2006, at the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, a treaty was created, and the treaty provided a great definition for both habilitation and rehabilitation. So the treaty stated that the objective of habilitation and rehabilitation is to enable persons with disabilities to attain and maintain maximum independence, full physical, mental, social, and vocational ability, and full inclusion and participation in all aspects of life. So going off of this definition, then, habilitation is a basic right that everyone should be entitled to. A person with disabilities does have the same rights as every other person, but the way in which they achieve their life goals does differ for a variety of reasons. So the process of habilitation is set up and designed to provide individual strategies and tools and resources to assist that person with disabilities in achieving whatever goals and objectives that they set for themselves. And habilitation is designed to support a variety of objectives and goals. So these objectives and goals can be as simple as taking the bus across town or as complex as becoming a world famous rocket scientist. It's really up to the individual with disabilities to pursue what they desire with their life. So on a personal note, I work as a special education teacher. So I don't have direct experience with habilitation services, but I do have experience with creating and implementing transition IEPs for students. So a transition IEP is much like a habilitation service plan because a transition IEP is created and implemented when a student is 14 years old. And in order to create the transition IEP, the case conference committee has to consult with the student on what the student wants to do with their life when they graduate high school. So the student could say anything, and this is a true story. We did have a student that his goal and objective when he graduated high school was to become an NBA player. So we do have to take that into consideration and find some way for him to accomplish that goal. And you work with the student, and once you start putting it on paper, they see like what is realistic and not. So spoiler alert, he didn't enter the NBA, but we were able to set him up as a coach at a local YMCA. So again, transition IEP is similar to the habilitation process because the client's goals and objectives are put first, and the practitioner must help the client reach their goal and objective. But unfortunately, the reality of our world is that persons with disabilities are vulnerable to human rights violations. And more often than not, these violations have been committed in the name of habilitation. So in my research, I came across a really interesting article. It was by Drew et al. In 2011 in a journal called The Lancet. And so the researchers in this article consulted with 51 people with mental and psychosocial disabilities from 18 different countries around the world. The researchers wanted to consult with this panel of people on their perspectives as well as their experiences with any human rights violations that they have experienced. So the researchers in this article were able to compile a list of strategies that the panel suggested for improving human rights of people with mental and psychosocial disabilities. So today I'm going to highlight 2 of these strategies and how they relate to habilitation and the services habilitation provides. The first strategy is promoting empowerment, rehabilitation, and participation of people with mental and psychosocial disabilities in their communities. So again, let me refresh you on the definition of habilitation that I stated earlier from the UN Treaty, because it does just this. The objective of habilitation and rehabilitation is to enable persons with disabilities to attain and maintain maximum independence, full physical, mental, social, and vocational ability, and full inclusion and participation in all aspects of life. So if the habilitation process is implemented appropriately, then habilitation is not a violation of human rights. Habilitation is actually doing exactly what the panel was asking for in this article. Habilitation is supposed to promote empowerment and participation for persons with disabilities. The second strategy that I'm going to highlight today that the panel suggested said, monitoring and assessment of human rights of people with mental and psychosocial disabilities and of mental health services generally. So, habilitation is not something that needs to be done away with or termed as an old school practice. Habilitation needs to be more properly regulated through monitoring and assessment. Drew et al. Concluded the research by summarizing what they thought a human rights-based approach would look like in the mental health field. So they said this model enables people to retain their legal capacity and at the same time choose to receive support in exercising this right when they desire it and when it is needed. The client remains at the center of the decision-making process on issues that affect him or her. And when necessary, supports can be on hand to explain relevant issues. Types of support might include advocates, community services, personal assistance, peer supports, and advanced planning. So that sounds like a perfect world to have that type of model for our clients. But realistically, we're not so far away from that. We just need to continue with monitoring and assessment of habilitation practices and really all practices in the mental health field. As a practitioner treating clients, you're held to codes from your organization that are set in place in order to prevent human rights violations. So the BACB Ethics Code 2.02 deals with the responsibility of behavior analysts. So behavior analysts are responsible to all parties that are affected by behavior analytic services. So when multiple parties are involved, that could be defined as a client. The hierarchy of parties must be established and communicated from the outset of the defined relationship. So behavior analysts need to identify and communicate who the primary ultimate beneficiary of services in any given situation, and then advocate for their best interest. Furthermore, when we look at BACB Ethics Code 2.05, which Christy mentioned earlier, it addresses the rights and prerogatives of client. So as a BCBA, when we're working with a client that's in a habilitation services, it's our legal and ethical obligation to advocate for the client amongst other service providers in order to guarantee that the client is not losing any legal rights and that the client's privileges are consistently maintained and supported. So again, I stand strong that habilitation is not a human rights disgrace. It should be taken with more of a human rights-based approach by putting the client and their individual needs first. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Heather will now present her claim for pro-liberty of choice making.
So I'm thinking about choice making in the community. I'd like to point out that according to the BACB code of 2.02, responsibility, the behavior analyst's responsibility is to all parties that are using the behavior analysis. I think that when a team is involved to support a disabled person's independence, that this code has a lot to do with the hierarchy of parties that are helping this person in making autonomous choices. According to the BACB code of 2.05, the rights and prerogatives of clients are of the utmost importance, and the BCBA must support their legal rights. I think that the topic of choice making has a lot to do with offering different options using self-determination and initiative. It's true that disabled people may need support in the community, but overall feel more empowered if they have options. I don't think it's necessary that the disabled person be fully independent to participate in the community. They can see the environment and alter their decisions based on observations. One of the basic requirements for self-determination comes from making informed choices. I think that the benefit of choice making is a higher correlation to quality of life. It has been shown that disabled people who live in the community and have choices in daily living activities have higher scores on quality of life. The concept of choice making is used for many things, such as increased task engagement, improving academic scores, improving behavioral issues, and in further developing communication. If we allow freedom and opportunity, then the disabled person will be entitled to choice. I think that all people should have the right to make choices regarding to their life and where they live, work, and go in the community. I think that people without choices will end up living in a more restricted living situation. The idea of choice making increases independence and allows people who need support to choose where they will live. This results in positive outcomes for the individual and the families involved. I think that some disabled people have challenges expressing their needs and wants and often lack the expressive communication, and they do need support. This does not mean that they can't live in the community. The support teams helping the client must work together to make it happen. I think that the method of working together in teams can be done by using preference assessment and informal methods, such as picture cards of objects. The cards may be used in an environment where the objects are not readily available and help them to generalize where the ideas may be used in the community. This could help them become more fully functioning. I think that by using direct observation, support teams can use this to assess the choices of people with autism by using single, paired, and multiple stimuli. Support teams can also teach choice making so that they can safely and responsibly live in the community. I think that the support team must be fully integrated with the disabled person into daily settings such as leisure time, snack and dinner time, and employment. The person will be able to choose activities such as music or TV or painting and drawing. I think that some people think that disabled people cannot be consistent in their choice making. I think it's true that people with disabilities are able to learn and develop the ability to be purposeful in their choice making. By being purposeful, this will increase the ability to do things like to be able to order food and drink in a restaurant, to choose their own sensory stimulation, and finally, to find their own employment. I really think that people with disabilities can learn to live autonomously and be able to have a fulfilling life.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
So habilitation does offer choices to persons with disability, as well as target specific skills that are needed to improve functional skills to better equip them for integration within the community. So since I don't have direct experience with habilitation services, I did look up some different companies in my area and across the United States that do offer habilitation services. So I found a company called To the Rescue, and they are a multi-state company that offers comprehensive life services. And they recently published an article that addressed some common misconceptions about habilitation day services. So they explained that day habilitation programs are not only for individuals who have significant physical or intellectual disabilities. The services support a variety of people and a variety of people with disabilities, including depression, anxiety, and even substance abuse. The day habilitation program offers a safe and supportive environment where everyone is welcome and participants can choose what programs best support their needs. So right off the bat, I really liked that they highlighted that their services put the client first. And day habilitation centers really can offer a variety of engaging activities for clients, as well as help reduce a lot of the burdens for families. So clients in habilitation settings are provided with choice activities every day to explore new things and discover new activities or even potential hobbies. So I know, just speaking from my personal experience, sometimes you need that little push or that little accommodation to help you kind of explore something new. So I'm not necessarily going to work out unless I have access to the gym. I'm not necessarily going to go explore the art festival downtown unless someone calls me and says, hey, you want to go to the art festival, or I have tickets to the art festival. So habilitation kind of provides access for clients to be able to explore these things. And day habilitation programs also provide participants with consistent opportunities to interact with their communities through service projects as well. So they can serve at local animal shelters or deliver meals to elderly or homeless. They can also have opportunities to visit nursing homes and help stock food pantries. Day habilitation services really can provide clients with opportunities to attend community art and musical festivals as well to explore those fine art things. So like I highlighted in my previous claim on human rights, but again, it's essential for practitioners to operate within their ethics and compliance codes stated by their organization. So BACB Code 4.02 involves clients in planning and consent. And in this code, it says that behavior analysts involve the client in planning of and consent for any behavior change programs. So as a BCBA working with a client in a habilitation setting, the BCBA must involve the client in selecting activities and goals that the client would like to target during habilitation. Additionally, BACB Code 4.03 states that behavior analysts must tailor programs to unique behaviors, environmental variables, assessment results, and goals of each client. So BCBAs, when working with a client, need to collaborate with the client to ensure that all variables are taken into account. Further, in my research, when I was looking around for different habilitation programs, in New York City, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, on their website, they explained that community habilitation within the state of New York can be delivered in a variety of places, including the individual's home. So habilitation is not necessarily having to go to a day center. It can be delivered in your home based on what that client needs. So clients don't necessarily have to go somewhere. They can reap the benefits of habilitation from home. And supports are not only centered around community engagement and getting the client out in the community. Supports are also included in areas like adaptive skill development, assistance with activities of daily living, even relationship building with peers, training and support for independence in travel and transportation, as well as adult educational supports if the client is going to college or wanting to get their GED. It also can help them develop social skills and leisure skills and help self-advocacy and informed choice skills, as well as appropriate behavior development to help the individual access all aspects of their community. So habilitation services are also able to provide pre-vocational training. So that's getting the individual ready to get into the work field. And that's based off of what the client has interest in and desires to do. So providing a person with disabilities with a variety of experiences and the opportunity to engage with peers, as well as exposures to new hobbies, can greatly improve the quality of their life. In a study by Podgorski et al. In 2004, researchers did a 12-week program on physical activity at a rehabilitation center. And this was with older adults with intellectual disabilities. So the purpose of this study was to determine whether the intervention would positively impact physical function in this population. They also wanted to see if participants would choose to actually participate in physical activity after they had been kind of exposed to it. And then finally, they also wanted to see if rehabilitation staff would sustain this type of program beyond the intervention period. So the studies were able to find that 92% of participants experienced improvement in at least one domain of physical function and physical activity. The physical activity sessions remained a very popular activity choice for the participants, so they really enjoyed it. And they even reported that many participants sustained functional gains 1 year after the study concluded, which I thought it was great that they did that 1 year follow-up. So again, habilitation does offer choices to persons with disabilities, and it can also target specific skills that client needs to improve functional skills to be better equipped for integration within the community.
Thank you, Sarah. Savannah will now present for pro-personal liberties.
The personal liberties point that I want to make is that any client has the right to deny treatment that they are offered. So the Code of Ethics 2.098 states that a client has the right to deny treatment that they do not want to complete or that they do not believe will benefit them. I think that as a behavior analyst, it is important for us to remember that the client is the one that is undergoing the treatment, and they should have a voice in what treatment they are being put through. Swift and Callahan, they completed a meta-analysis study about the impact when a client has a treatment preference. When a client chooses their treatment and it is one that they prefer, they were half as likely to drop out of the treatment compared with the clients who did not receive their preferred treatment. I think that this is definitely a good point when looking at personal liberties, because the clients that preferred their treatment, for the most part, stayed with the treatment the entire time, whereas those who were given a treatment plan that was not of preference, they were more likely to withdraw from the treatment because they didn't necessarily prefer the treatment. They didn't see the benefit. Bannerman, Sheldon, Sherman, and Harchick, they discussed that clients may not be motivated to achieve particular goals and that they may resist the teaching procedures that they were put through. This brings up the point that when a client can choose their treatment plan, they are more likely to be motivated to complete the treatment that they are involved in. This makes personal liberties important because the client is the one that the treatment is supposed to benefit. So they should be involved in making decisions about the treatment that they are being given, if they are competent enough to understand what it is that they want their end goal to be. I think that personal liberties are very important for people with disabilities. Just because they have a disability, it does not mean that they should not be treated as a human who has their own rights and opinions. They should be able to have a say-so in what type of treatment and the goals for the treatment procedure that they're going through. They should be involved and collaborate, and if able, and they should discuss any issues that they see with their treatment procedure. One quote that I love is, "A person is a person no matter how small." So the way I look at this quote is that no matter how old or young, or if the person has a disability, they are still a person and they are entitled to their opinions and their own thoughts when it comes to their treatment plan. And as the code above states, the code 2.09A states that clients have the right to deny treatment if they don't want to undergo it. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah. Noelle will now state her claim for prohabilitation.
All right, so since I am prohabilitation, I want to talk about how the individual has the ability to reach their full potential. So another word for prohabilitation is pro-empowerment. So we're wanting to empower the individual with disabilities to, like I said, reach their full potential. So when the clients with developmental and intellectual disabilities receive individualized intervention that a habilitation setting can provide, the client can successfully remediate academic deficits. As we all know, early intervention is said to be impacts lives of children with ASD to make academic goals attainable. So, as many of the people before me have stated, the BACB code 2.09b, this states that behavior analysts have the responsibility to advocate for the appropriate amount and level of service provision and oversight required to meet the defined behavior change program goals. This compliance code goes back to another one that Sarah talks about earlier in the debate. The behavior analyst is responsible for advocating for how much service the individual needs to meet their goals in the behavior change program. In the article by Millions and Coles, the Saturday Cognitive Habilitation Program provided interventions for children suspected of or affected by prenatal alcohol exposure at risk for academic failure. So in this study, it was provided on an individual basis. Each session was 60 minutes long, and the children received 50 minutes of direct instruction. All the children except for 2 were administered a test called the Matrix Analogies Test, and the other 2 were given a TORC 3 due to their academic ability and reading skills provided by their parents and guardians. The children made significant gains in reading comprehension, mathematical reasoning, and nonverbal reasoning, but not in word reading and recall of mathematical facts. So the studies would need to gather information about the range of services the children received while participating in an intervention program. So this study tells you that they were able to read better and able to work through the math problems, but not able to remember the math facts. The findings suggest that the individual's program designed to remediate underlying cognitive deficiencies within context of a skill has potential to become a model for effective interventions for children affected by prenatal alcohol exposure. So finally, helping developing and intellectual disabled individuals with the needs like physical therapy, occupational therapy, behavior therapy, and other habilitative services will help improve the overall function of their lives and daily living skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle. Thank you both sides for presenting your claims. In conclusion, both sides make very good and valid points. We believe that finding a balance between habilitation and giving clients the chance to exercise personal liberties is what's best for the client. After hearing each side, we would like to know what your opinion is, along with any questions you may have. And we have some questions that we would like to cover today. The first question is, do personal liberties differ when working with children versus working with adults?
When working with children and discussing personal liberties, I believe that they still have a right to address their feelings, and if they don't necessarily like something. I think that parents should still be involved, and they should be there to help process the child's thoughts and the feelings, and to help the child understand what it is that the child wants, and to teach the child that their opinion does matter, especially when it comes to their own life and the things happening in their life. When working with the adults, I believe that as long as they are competent to make their own decision, then they should be able to do so. I do think that even if they are not fully competent, they still have that right to, in their own way, state their likes and dislikes about the treatments that they are undergoing. I do think that there's a difference when working with children versus when working with adults, because when you work with children, you have more parental involvement, which gives more collaboration and communication to discuss what the child wants and what is best for the child. Whereas with adults, you have the adults to discuss, and sometimes you may have a caregiver if the adult is not fully competent to help mediate and discuss what it is the adult wants.
Thank you, Savannah. Our next question is, how can choices be made available to individuals who have limited resources?
Thanks. That's a good question. So habilitation day programs do accept a wide range of payments, and most accept Medicaid insurance. There's also community grants that are often available to help pay for who are unable to pay for more private services. But typically the hourly rate is less than you would pay for a babysitting service. And I'm in no way comparing habilitation to babysitting. I'm just saying it is an affordable service. Also, the Medicaid office does offer a lot of information on something called the Home and Community-Based Service Waiver. So you can just go to Medicaid.gov and you can find a lot of information on this. but the home and community-based waiver provides opportunities for Medicaid beneficiaries to receive services in their home or in the community rather than at institutions or isolated settings. And these programs serve a variety of targeted populations, such as people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, and or mental illnesses.
Thank you, Sarah. Our last question is, do any of you have any personal experiences related to the topic that you would like to share?
So, as an RBT, I often use token boards and preference assessments with my clients. And in doing so, this helps the client come up with many options which they can make their own choices. So I see this as a personal experience that is related to the topic of choice making.
Thank you. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing your views on such an important and controversial subject.